Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Whiskey Congress is back in session. Steve couldn't be here today. He's got business things to deal with, so he's not available. But filling in is a past guest host and a current nominee for Best Male Comic in Cleveland by Cleveland Scene Magazine, John Armstrong. So first of all, congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you so much.
Second of all, people, get on there and vote for John Armstrong, Best Male Comic in Cleveland. You can vote once a day up until August 29th. Just Cleveland Scene, Best of 2023. Do it. All right, man. Thanks for coming in. Good to see you. It's been a while.
Dude, thanks for having me, man. You know, I love this, man. I feel like we got the band back together. I know this is officially, you guys' thing, but we've had some good discussions on this pod, and I am happy to be here and keep it going.
We are very happy to have you, and you and I traded some discussions about topics. Unfortunately, the one we cannot avoid is Donald fucking Trump. I'm so sick of talking about this guy. But yet, he's been indicted 3 times, probably a 4th coming. I mean, realistically, if he was an average citizen, he'd be in jail right now.
Oh, he wouldn't even have been able to ascend to what he did. But yeah, even if I would say he's like herpes, like he's back, but he like never went anywhere. He's more like AIDS.
Yeah, no, he doesn't never went anywhere. But he's back. He's loud. Every time he gets challenged legally, he punches back and says, it's corrupt and I'm a victim and whatever. And he's literally said, I'm being indicted for you. The guy has a Jesus complex.
Yeah.
But is it a complex or just a fucking charade? Because I think it's a charade.
It's kind of both. I do at the core of it. I think there is like a textbook narcissism to it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But at the same time, I mean, he's clearly like, cognizant of his intentions and what he's doing. You know what I mean? You can tell by how he's manipulative and how he's not 100% in lockstep with everything that Republicans do. Now, 98% of it, yes, he does, but some stuff he'll like go in the other direction just because he's antagonistic in nature. He just likes fucking with people. He's a troll. You know what I mean?
Sure, and way back in 2015, he said, I could shoot someone in the face in the middle of Fifth Avenue and not lose a voter. He's proven that. He can do whatever he wants over and over again. His loyalists, and I got really shitty with someone the other day. So there's a bar at the end of the street. We talk about it fairly regularly on the show, though we never say the name. But it's a bar where being racist is not frowned upon nearly strongly enough. If I'm a scumbag for going there, all I'm going to say is, I can walk home. Sorry, but the other day
Jim has chosen cheap drinks over his racial integrity.
Over his integrity. Period. Yes, I have. Cheap drinks and an easy walk home. Not. All right.
Add gaslighting.
Yeah, I'm just playing. This has been an episode of Whiskey Congress. Thanks for listening. John Armstrong's been our guest. Vote for him at ClevelandScene.com. No, seriously. I go there, and I've got friends who go there. But at the end of the day, it's a blue-collar, Irish cop and fireman kind of bar. And racial shit gets said there all the time. And call me a pussy, but I usually just like, all right, I'm not going to change it.
Do you ever see black people in there?
Oh, yeah. Steve, and I go there. The funny thing is, Steve is beloved there.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. I go there alone. And it's
oh, yeah, you've told me this before, yeah. So I think we've talked about this. It's kind of a... if I can uphold Steve as my, my colon pal,
I don't think that's fair. And he's going to come back on me, so stop it.
No, but Steve, I'm not saying anything indicting you or anything like that. I'm saying in the eyes of the people there, if they can be decent to you, I've been Steve in certain circles, and you find out that these people are racist, but they think because of their proximity to you that somehow absolves them of the shit that they say.
I hear what you're saying. And the other day I was in there, and someone that I know, and we're friendly, we're not like buds, but we're friendly. And I had just watched a bunch of January 6th testimony material, and I was having none of it. And this guy starts licking Trump's balls, and I just fucking lost it. And I called him a traitor, said that cocksucker should be hanged. And I'm like, all right, probably a bit aggressive, especially given that setting. But,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, certain people, you're not going to sway them. So, like,
no,
it's like just let it. It's like arguing any,
shouting to the voids. Yeah, right. Shouting to the void. But yeah, he keeps saying that the more you indict him, the stronger he's going to get. I get that. It seems that way at times, and the other times I'm like seeing other people going, I'm just tired of the fucking drama, and they still wanted to turn to Trump light and go to Ron DeSantis, but that guy cannot stop fucking up.
So the thing that's so hilarious about Ron DeSantis, I was saying this on stage yesterday, is he has all the fascism of Trump with none of the charisma. Like,
that's fair.
Yeah, he is just like. It's kind of like certain shit is undeniable. We've talked about this on this podcast, how like behind the scenes, Republican or Democrat, everyone hates Ted Cruz. And
right.
And like DeSantis kind of has that energy. There are certain Republicans that can all of them kind of, circle the wagons and they'll coalesce around, an idea,
sure.
and there's not a lot of infighting. They're really good with that. But to be the leader, you have to have that kind of Ronald Reagan-esque type charisma, and Trump, in a more aggressive way, has that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it's funny to see DeSantis kind of that entitlement of him thinking he could just slide in there. Because, again, that's the other thing. A lot of Trump's fans... I don't know the percentage. I don't know if it's 15 to 20, 25, but there's a lot that voted for Obama. So there's racism there. But racism in America is so weird, going back to Thomas Jefferson fucking his slaves. You know what I mean? And not just Thomas Jefferson.
Right.
I mean, but all of them. But you know what I mean? There's so many... We were talking about this earlier, this like binary thing. Everything isn't as easily... laid out as that, because you can be racist, but you can be sleeping with somebody of the other race, or you can have kids with somebody of the other race, or you can have an appreciation for this thing that people, you know what I mean? And those are where a lot of these overlaps are, and where a lot of these people who are Trump's fans, and they'll dismiss a lot of the white supremacy shit and the Christian nationalism shit and all that, because there's a certain element of the blow up the system thing that they like that Trump does. Part that I can't get is just the dismissal of a certain amount of rule of law. It's like, you have to understand that if you got somebody this gangster and this corrupt, like, yay, it's your team, but what happens when this dude is out of office if we've established this precedent? And it's like,
but
it's
no
so
one thinks
weird.
that far ahead.
And that's the thing. It's like eventually, if you're letting this person do this, even let's say Democrats or lefties never get in there, there's gonna be a right wing person that's gonna do something that you're gonna be. That's why in all these states, Ohio just did it, but like in Kansas, these very red states, when it came down to abortion rights, like even Republicans were like, no.
Yeah, and so we'll jump topics.
I'm not trying to.
No, it's cool. No, we'll go on the fly, because Ohio Issue 1 is something Stephen had kind of a special episode about, and Ohio Issue 1, I honestly was questioning whether we should do it, because I didn't know if it would get national attention. Then the next day I turn on CNN, it's all they're talking about. But Ohio Issue 1 basically was going to lock in so that it was almost impossible for citizens to put issues on the ballot, and then also
all
make it
88
60-40.
counties would have to agree to put something on the ballot. So all you would have to do is get some county
To
and
not
buttfuck somewhere nowhere, which is most of Ohio, and then it would hold up the progress in what is the economic engine of this state, which is Cleveland, Toledo, Youngstown, Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, and to a certain extent, Athens.
Okay, I wouldn't put Athens in there, but sure, there's a university there. But anyway, Issue 1 goes down in flames. Ironically, if Issue 1 had passed, you would need a 60% threshold for the state house to pass a change to the Constitution, and
we only got 57%.
Issue 1 lost almost 60-40. So little irony there. And well, I'll come back to this later, but this also possibly paves the way for recreational weed in Ohio.
Oh yeah, the weed and the abortion was really what was baked into that bill.
But, was that an intentional pun or no?
No, but we can roll with it, which is why you should vote for me for best comedian.
Vote for John Armstrong, Cleveland Scene Magazine, best male comic.
The jokes write themselves.
But DeSantis literally cannot stop stepping on his own dick, for lack of a better way of saying it. I mean, he's amazingly uncharismatic, and he was something we talked about on the show for like a year because he was that looming force. And to give Steve props when he's not here, Steve said the guy's best move is just shut the fuck up, let the craziness happen, and jump in at the end. Yeah. And he couldn't do it.
He couldn't help himself because a lot of Republicans counted Trump out to their own detriment. They thought it was
back
over.
in 2016, after 15, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, even after the January 6th thing. See, here's the thing. Most Republicans know that January 6th thing was fucked up. Even back to, when Lindsey Graham was like, if we elect him, we're going to regret it and blah, blah, blah. Everybody who has half a brain knows that. And then after January 6th, it got quiet and nobody was going to denounce Trump, but they were going to let him go down in flames, and that's what they thought was happening. And then so DeSantis steps up and he thinks that there's this vacuum and this void that there is not. And on top of that, he overplayed his hand because, yes, fascism is here and it's coming and it's getting worse. But the way he struck down CRT, even getting into the Don't Say Gay bill, yes, you're in the South, but Miami is a cultural mecca.
Sure.
There is a large gay presence in Florida. You do have the Cuban vote that leans Republican just because they're so anti-democratic because of Kennedy some of what they went through. But yes, with Kennedy and Cuba and all that shit. But it's not such a slam dunk with a lot of these hard right things in all of Florida. Because a big part of the problem, not just in Florida, but this country, is most people don't vote anyway. I mean, if people really turned out in Florida, it's not that it's a super liberal place, but for how Florida people want to live, you can't be a Florida person in a right-wing place because those people, they like their freedom, they like their sunshine, they like being outside, they like their weed, their coke, their whores. Not all of them, but you get what I'm saying? They're free. They're free people. It's not. You're not like in North Dakota, dude.
It's an older community. I mean, statistically, there's more old people than most other areas.
But for the retirement thing, that runs up the numbers. But yeah,
right, exactly. But that's what people retire to Florida. Yeah, people don't retire to Cleveland.
Yeah.
Not intentionally. Anyway, they die here. Right, exactly. But yeah, so I mean, DeSantis was the heir apparent. He's now a really feeble opponent. Trump is getting more and more unhinged. I mean, I've heard Chris Christie say this and take Chris Christie for what he is. But he's known Trump for decades, and he basically said the guy's terrified. He knows his freedom is at risk, and he's doing everything he can to avoid hearing the jail cell slam behind him. And I hate to sound like a sellout, but honestly, I want this to have a peaceful resolution. I don't know what happens if you put Trump in a federal prison. Not saying he doesn't belong there.
Well, he belongs there, and he needs to go. But Trump is kind of an inevitability of this country and what would happen.
Is that a Thanos remark? Or?
Yes, it is. But it is an inevitability of what, because he is, and I need to, please, listeners, bear with me. He's a rich white man. He was born of privilege. His father was the one who amassed that fortune. And he's tried his best to, flush it down the toilet. He's, I know, when white people hear the words white privilege and things like that, it kind of cuts in a way, and it sounds condescending, you know what I mean? And just liberals, yes, we're horrible at messaging, you know what I mean? It's hard to get people on your side when you're condescending to them. But the truth of the matter is, he is who he is because America was made to benefit somebody like him, and he takes advantage of that one time after another time after another time. Anybody else, they would have been gone by now. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it's testament to, again, how he can work the system. And he's charismatic. He's not very book smart, but he can work people, and that's part of,
how he sells,
his longevity. But this whole not holding rich people to account and not holding white men to account it was inevitability, and this has all came to a head. And now you have the head of state, who all of them have committed crimes, and that's the thing that's happening now, and that's what everybody knows behind the scenes. If they convict him, which they are forced to and they have to, then that sets a precedent, and you can now convict any president because they're all going to do something. You know what I mean?
Okay, I'll agree with you to a point, but I think he took it to the next level.
For sure. I'm not downplaying him, and I'm not muddying the waters with some whataboutism. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying people and legal people, I'm sure, have to be thinking that if you are tenacious enough and get a good enough prosecutor, the left will never do it. It'd be great, but somebody could literally take Obama or Bush to task about people who they've killed in drone strikes. You know what I mean? Now, you can hide behind executive privilege and blah, 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 but if you set this precedent of holding the president of account, those cracks start to get wider and wider. And that's what a lot of people are nervous about.
Well, that gets into the international realm of when George W. Bush was recently out of office, it was said by multiple sources, I can't validate them, but that if he left the country, he would have been arrested as a war criminal.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Iran still got a price on his head.
Okay, and look, it's easy to sit here and say, oh, it's not fair. We invaded a foreign country, a sovereign country. We did it on false pretenses. That's
and even the way we do war, it used to have to been voted on by Congress, and we even did that. So again, this is just setting it's a thing to where if you do it, you're setting a precedent to where you can do this, and that makes people who have half a brain very nervous. But then on the other side of that, this is the catch-22. If you don't hold him into account, this blatant just criminality that he's doing, and Republicans are already been pushed into this corner. They're not stupid. They know they don't have the numbers. So they have to do this fascistic type shit. That's why this issue one thing that we just voted on. They have to have a way where they can have minority rule.
Right.
And in a civilized way, they will do what they just tried to do in Ohio, which thank God we voted it down. But in a gangster way, they will do January 6th. And you was talking about World War I and World War II. The first time never works, but the second time works a lot. You know what I mean?
Well, right. And when you're dealing with people who learn from their mistakes,
which are human beings, dude. A lot of people don't even know the historical context that you can put a lot of this in. We are in very dangerous waters. But like I said, this is an inevitability to where just years and years of not holding people to account. This is us not holding Nixon to true account, and then Ford pardoning him. All that shit with the Iran-Contra and the savings and loan shit that went on with Reagan. No, that was Reagan.
I was HW's kid was one of the Neil Bush was one of the big players in that.
And then Bush pardoned them. But it's all this, and then of course with Bush and W and Cheney and all that, and invading Iraq, and the.
The no bid contracts. The amount of corruption that went on around Iraq, and the billions and trillions of dollars that got funneled. So everyone's talking about how the Biden crime family now. If this is a right wing entity, it's Biden crime family. They're doing all this stuff. Let me say again, I don't have Hunter Biden on the board, but apparently now they've changed his investigation to being appointed by a special counsel. I've said it to many people. I've said it on the show. I don't give a fuck.
And that's the thing. We're not sycophants of the Biden family. If Biden is proved to be anything, or his family is, we're not here making up some QAnon shit. Lock him up. I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. That's the difference between parties and supporters of these sides, is that there's
when you're in a cult, you defend the cult leader.
Yeah. And again, all this shit is being brought to a head because to be objective to this, and I know it's not just white people. There are black and Hispanic people and all type of people in this. But at the core of this is, like, there's a shift going on with white people. The numbers are starting to, like, tilt a little bit. There's a lot of nervousness in white America about where the country is going. And then you have these, like, images of crime and all these smash and grabs. And
Sure.
And then you have these... just now it's just it's a joke of, you know, Seattle or Portland or San Francisco, these bastions of liberalness, and there's just so many homeless people and people shitting in the streets, and they're using that as an attack against leftism and liberalism, not getting to the core of it's the problem of capitalism. Those three cities are three of the most, like, thriving capitalist economic cities. But the thing is, with that comes expensive rent, and and just the haves and have-nots become very much more upfront, which is why you see that. You know what I mean? But the right has used this to say that all leftist policies don't work, and these are just examples of just how shitty, you know.
Yeah, and honestly, I've never been to San Francisco.
Neither have I.
I've always wanted to go. I spent a bunch of time in Southern California. But I've always wanted to go to San Francisco, and I never did. But my friends who've been there multiple times say it has gotten terrible. I mean, the homelessness situation is awful.
But that's more of a symptom of capitalism as a whole. You know what I mean?
I do.
The thing that I hate about that is, like, how the right has just used that as, like, something to strike down everything left. Like, so there's homeless people shitting in the sidewalks in San Francisco, so therefore, you know, minimum wage shouldn't be this,
right?
And we shouldn't treat CRT, and gay people shouldn't have the right to get married, and so goes all of that because of hyperinflation and zoning laws not allowing you to build adequate housing, and just rich people holding on and hoarding their resources in these cities. And because that's the other thing. The people who are benefiting in these cities, in these Portlands and San Franciscos and Seattles, these are, like, when you get to the top of these ivory towers, these ain't a bunch of fucking hippies in a drum circle. These are just more capitalists, dude.
What Peter Thiel and venture capitalists with billions of dollars are just winging money around and never see that stuff in the street because they're going straight to a limo that takes them to their fucking yacht club.
It's the same as when people, like, critique, like, New York for, like, you know, these liberals in New York. Like, that's literally where Wall Street is. And every black New Yorker will tell you that's one of the most racist places. New York is one of the most segregated cities. The shit that like black people got into with Italians.
Boston objects. They do a better job of being racist.
But you know what I mean. These New England cities that are claiming to be these bastions of liberalism are still at their core just capitalistic, racist places. It's just that there's a certain amount of vitriol that you don't outwardly get. They'll play the game on paper, and that's again what Trump blew up. This inevitability of this capitalism and this just white supremacy and all this shit just coming to a head. I know I just mixed all that up.
It's like fine. But New York segregation, I don't want to say this the wrong way because it'll come off terribly, but it's an amazing type of segregation because it's not just black, white, Hispanic. It's Armenian. And I mean, there are groups of... And in a way, first of all, that's one of the reasons why New York votes Democrat all the time is because, not saying Democrats don't fuck things up left, right, and sideways, because they do, but when you live in a community where you're so crunched together, you realize you kind of need each other. You kind of need to at least be civil.
Well, that is the core of it, and that is what I wish people would just teach at its core and explain to a lot of Republicans. Like, it's very city mouse, country mouse. Like, because again, a lot of these people in cities are conservative on paper, and a lot of people in the country are liberal on paper because they're just smoking weed and drinking and fucking. You know what I mean? But the thing about it is, you have to have a bit of collectivism if you live that on top of each other. The trash has to be taken out. The trains have to run on time.
Yeah.
And the people who run that have to get paid accordingly because these are the people who are your neighbors. These are the people who are running the schools that you're dropping your kids off to. So, okay, we'll have the tax be this if that's taken care of, if that means that this machine can work. But to people on the outside of that, they look at it as being more of a burden on them, which on top of that is a manipulation because all of these blue states in these areas subsidize those rural areas that claim they don't need that. And that's the other thing. It's been such a game of like whack-a-mole that it's like all these southern states like your Floridas and your Texas that brag about we don't have the tax burdens that the Californias and New Yorks have. It's like, well, be that as it may, you don't. But those states still subsidize the red states because you all are just hiding away to pay for shit. You know what I mean? It's still the bill still has to come due. I will say the thing that helps Florida is it has so much tourism that covers, because that's the problem with Ohio. There's so much brain drain that you end up having to have a tax because the lights have to be paid. But if you have a constant influx of people and they take advantage of that, same with Texas, they have that energy. You know what I mean? There's a lot of energy in Texas, and solar and wind is taking over on the low, but they don't talk about that. But that's become a big one. But you know, you got your refineries around Houston. You know what I mean? You've got your oil and all that. So that helps to offset some of that, them being able to say we don't have taxes. But the bill always comes due. You know what I mean? But
also, every politician for my adult lifetime has just been kicking the can down the road.
Oh, yeah, that's the other thing. Let's print money.
And I'm going to do a South Park reference. There's a great episode of South Park from years ago where Man Bear Pig fights Satan and wins. And it's about climate change. So it's Al Gore and kicking the can down the road. And they reach back to the kids from South Park's grandparents who, if we would have given up gas-burning cars and all this 25 or 50, 70 years ago, we wouldn't have been there. And so now to kick the can down the road, we need to give up soy sauce. And the kids look at each other and go, bland rice? Fuck that.
Yeah.
And okay, so we've been kicking the can down the road on climate for decades. And now as Malcolm X would say, the chickens have come home to roost.
Yeah.
Dude, the fucking planet's on fire.
Yeah, literally.
When you think about the fires that happened in Canada and what that meant, we here in Cleveland, and much more so folks on the East Coast in the New York area, we're dealing with smoke from Canadian wildfires.
Well, not just that. That shit was in D.C. That shit was in Minneapolis.
Sure.
That shit was in Duluth, Iowa, Montana, everywhere, man.
Look what happened in Maui.
Yeah.
I've never been to Hawaii.
That death toll is still going up. It's at 83 now.
Okay,
yeah.
I heard 90.
Yeah.
But either way,
it's still going up.
Fires are cities are bursting into flames. People are diving into the ocean.
To be fair, what they were talking about in Hawaii, yes, is climate change, but this is another reason, just this imperialism and capitalism. A lot of indigenous people, they already, have a lot of contempt, which they should, against the United States. And as far as some of the stuff I've seen, from some of the, I don't know, they said a lot of alarms didn't go off that should have went off. A lot of redundancies, right? A lot of redundancy systems that should have been triggered were not triggered. So this wasn't just a climate thing. This was a failure just of the
systemic.
of the whole apparatus. You know what I mean? And people not communicating and just. So that was a even bigger thing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that shit with Hurricane Katrina, to where the hurricane really was over, and then the levees broke, and then shit started flooding, and then it was just a hot potato. Nobody knew how to address it. But the hurricane was essentially done. You know what I mean?
I was about to go there because Katrina was a bad storm, and one of my many complaints about Al Gore is his movie. I've never read An Inconvenient Truth, but I've seen the movie, and the movie focuses a lot on Katrina. It's like, that wasn't a climate change issue. That was, these levees should have been fortified. They were not. There was actually money in, to bring us back to George W. Bush, there was money in the federal budget to fortify the levees, and then the Iraq War starts, and that money got diverted, and the city of New Orleans got destroyed.
Yeah.
But that showed a really... Katrina shined a really ugly light on race in America because to white people, like it's kind of evident to us because we go through it. It wasn't really a shock, but I will say I didn't say shock. I said it's shown a light.
I got you. I don't know that whole thing. I don't think it was. The problem with Al Gore is just he sucks. Remember Hannity and Combs?
Yes.
Like he is very Combs. He is very just
Milk
like
toast.
Yes, you know what I mean. So it's
Yes,
just
I know what you mean.
It's just very easy. So I don't think that Katrina cannot be seen as a climate change thing because it was. But I mean, I hear what you're saying as far as maybe they over focused on that. You know what I mean? But the overall problem with Al Gore is he's Al Gore. If he didn't do that, he would have did something else. It's the Democrats are so Dukakis in the tank with the helmet. You know what I mean? They just can't help but to look like.
Here's where I disagree with you on that point. Dukakis was trying to be cool.
But
Failed horribly. I'm not denying that.
But either way, I mean, you could argue that fucking Al Gore was trying to come across as not just intellectual, but approachable by giving you an example that everybody saw. I promise you, that's what they were thinking. But in his mind, he didn't go any further than that. And kind of, pivot back to a DeSantis, you don't have the charisma that Bill has. You can't smooth your way through this.
True.
So when you see and that's why I like the particulars of the details. To me, don't matter as much because if it wasn't that, it would have been something else. He just doesn't have the.
No, So where I was disagreeing with you is Al Gore's biggest flaw, in my opinion, was he was such a smug wannabe intellectual. He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
But he came down as so condescending and so.
I never got that from him. I
Really?
don't think he was smug. We can agree to disagree.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go at you on that.
I'm certainly not.
I think part of it.
I'm not going to die on the Al Gore hill. I don't give a fuck about the guy.
Neither do I. that I think is that. But I do. I will. Yeah, because Tipper Gore with the rap thing, they were very Southern. Just we're prim and proper. And
these words don't belong, and our kids are going to be corrupted when they hear people talking about bitches and hoes.
Yeah,
I don't think Tipper Gore ever said bitches and hoes, but
she probably had some Nancy Reagan level fucking sexual shit going on. Anybody who projects outwardly to be that Puritan, like behind closed doors, my God, it's like wake up the gimp. Like they're getting it in, dude.
I was not at all prepared for Wake Up the Gimp. Well done.
Vote for me, man.
Vote for John Armstrong, Cleveland Scene male comic for 2023. But I forget where I was going to go now. So the weeds kicking in, I guess. But the climate issue is something that we've kicked the can down the road, and not to be, fear-mongering old liberal white guy, whatever. I've almost stopped caring because I almost think the top, when the top is spinning, it's doing fine until it's not. But once it loses that starts that wobble, it's going down. I don't know if we're in that wobbly state yet, but it sure feels like it.
Oh, we are.
And I've heard multiple climate scientists say, yeah, we could solve this if we did something 20 years ago, but we didn't. So
it's bad.
What are you gonna do?
We're in it. But here's the thing. The way human beings are going, we're kind of at a precipice anyway. And if it wasn't the climate, we're kind of, and that's the thing. Everybody feels it. Everybody feels it. I'm not religious, but that end of the world religious shit that Christians are doing, and even other religions, I get it because everybody has this feeling of. It feels like a climax that we're coming to. And just damn near everything we're doing is not sustainable. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Just our overall consumption. So one of the biggest things that has to happen is just capitalism as we know it has to die. And I know socialism, blah blah blah. Capitalism played its part. You know what I mean? I don't think we'll ever have a utopia just because of the human condition. I don't think. But
greed will always be there, and greed will throw anything.
But at the same time, not to be morbid, but rape and murder will always be there too. But that's not to say that we shouldn't have laws against rape and murder. You know what I mean? Because those are two primal things that humans will always do. But because of that, you have to check for that, and that's why, because of greed, you have to check for that. But capitalism has kind of cashed out. And I think it's finally gotten to a point to where it's starting to affect enough white people, and not just here, but in the UK and France. That coup that's going on in Niger, it's an underlying pin to that, how how France still kind of uses all of those francophone African countries as their wallet. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so a lot of this angst that a lot of white people and people of the West, quote unquote, are getting is because these old systems of colonialism and capitalism are collapsing, and it's just not sustainable. You know what I mean? And no, we don't all have to be commies or anything like that, but there does have to be some type of shared experience, because even if you stratify all this, as we're proving, eventually it comes for us all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's so many efforts in corporate America to remove humans from jobs, whether it's self-checkout or whatever.
The writer's strike with the let's use AI.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll go there in a minute. But, but at some point, even if you're at the top of the food chain, we're in an oligarchy. Let's face it. We are. And the top of the food chain, they might disdain the worker bees and whatever and look at us as pawns in their game, but ultimately you need us. And then there's the whole...
And COVID proved that. It was like, wow, we can actually go without hedge fund managers, but the guy who works at the grocery store, we really need him now.
100%.
We really need the garbage man now. We really need the cops now. We really need the firefighters now. Like, you know what I mean?
Certain things you can't AI, certain things you can't replace with
And even
technology.
if you did AI, I'm like, this is kind of jumping around, but like cyber attacks, which is going to be a big thing in the future. Like they were talking about, having a lot of these systems analog, because you can, in theory, cyber attack an energy plant or something like that, or water purification station. They were saying how a lot of these pneumatic things, it should stay analog, because some things you shouldn't be able to access through just the digital means.
Well, and that's a very good point, and that's huge. But then there's the stuff that is automated, going to stay automated, like credit.
Well, that's the thing. Once the convenience is there, once they can prove that this robot can do this and you don't have to pay anybody, and it is going to be like exponentially more efficient than a human anyway in so many ways, that it just, it's kind of like the nuclear bomb. Once it's here, it's just like, let's hope this thing that's going to bite us in our ass doesn't bite us in our ass.
And that's the thing, is you achieve a goal. And in politics, it was years ago the Democrats put in the supermajority for whatever. That's come back to bite them in the ass multiple times. You make a short-term fix to a problem you think you have, not thinking of the future consequences. I haven't seen Oppenheimer yet, but we all know what happened there.
Yeah,
and
back to Trump with the, this coming to inevitability of like, do we prosecute or not? Because either way, this has come to a point to where all this shit that we let go is biting us in the ass right now.
And I want to jump topics a little bit and say, because this kind of plays in, that all of this we're talking about, fires are literally causing death and destruction everywhere. Literally, the countryside is on fire. At the same time, we've got a war going on between Russia and Ukraine that has a risk of spilling over into Poland. So Poland is amassing troops at the Belarusian border. Russia has said an attack on Belarus is an attack on Russia, which means they'll attack Poland. And I say this probably every fucking show now. Like, what did it feel like in America in the late 30s? Were you sitting there going, well, that'll never involve us. Hey, they just had a world war. No one wants that. Yeah. All of a sudden, fuck, we could be in it. And if Poland gets attacked and if we abide by our NATO commitments, we're in a war with Belarus, which Russia is saying they're on the side of Belarus.
And on top of that,
China.
An undercurrent of what's going on in Poland that's going on here is they've had this swing towards right-wingism. They're one of the only Western European countries that's become Christian like Americans, kind of, you know what I mean? So a lot of our things that we've been embracing lately, they've been embracing too, which would make us that much more, in my mind, able to like attach to them, like, this proxy war thing could get going, because there's not a separation, because a lot of Americans, white Americans, because of a lot of the liberalism in Western Europe, they Norway or those commies, or they poo-poo all that. But some of a lot of what Poland's doing is very lockstep with what America's doing, which is why I think of all countries, so many people shit on France. I don't see us responding to something happening in France, but I could see something happening, as a...
In terms of Like internally in Poland or France?
No. To your point of if Russia,
Belarus and Poland get into
right?
it. Yeah.
If they were aggressor, just making us, buck out our chests and we're here to protect Poland. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but if you here's a thing about America, we really don't have to worry about foreign nations invading us. Neither Canada.
Well, again, back to the cyber thing. It's going to be cyber.
Yeah. Oh, and again, I think you want to send America crazy? Shut down our financial institutions for a day.
It's going to be cyber. And not just that. Have you ever seen that? I forget where it was, but it's this thing. The KGB was talking about bringing down the United States. And they were very forward-thinking in how they would do this. And it was in so many tiers. You do this by generations. And it's literally.
No, I've not seen this.
Oh, dude, it's amazing. I'll try to. I'm not trying to be vague like Joe Rogan podcast now. Like we can't substantiate this, but kids are pissing in fucking litter boxes in class. So
kids are pretending to be cats.
I
was going there and going, oh, actually, that's where you just went.
I'm not trying to do.
Anyway, I just want the Ukraine thing to stay on people's radar because it's fucking huge. But going back to the whiteboard and
okay, yeah, sorry.
So no apology at all. There was an incident in Montgomery, Alabama, that I want to hear your opinion about. And if there's one thing this podcast has taught me, it's sometimes.
Why would you want to hear it from me?
Sometimes, well, you know what? Because sometimes it's time for the white guy to shut the fuck up. And that's what I'm going to do. Unless you want me to go in with.
No, I want you to talk. That's that thing of like that doesn't help, man. Of like You don't have to be down for me to be up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I get to your point of like when people is over talk. It's like when men over talk women, and it's like, well, maybe just let the women talk. So I do get that.
Yeah. And I'm not saying I won't share an opinion. I'm just saying I'm gonna.
I got you. So Montgomery Brawl, John Armstrong. How do you feel? That was such a moment of catharsis for all black people that it was, oh my God, dude. Like, and all the hits, the guy swimming over and not only breaking like stereotypes of black people don't swim, but like just because here's the thing, and I learned this talking to white people, my girlfriend who's white, we literally live together, but like the way the algorithm goes, you can have a totally different reality to what's going on in the world and your perception of what's going on in the world. We could piggyback that back to what's going on with right-wing people, which was why they're kind of in this cult and they think we're crazy. You know what I mean? But in my algorithm, so much like every single day, because of a few accounts that I follow on social media, you'll see a black person getting killed by police, getting shot by police. There's this guy getting unjustly arrested. It's just all this, it just keeps building up, and we see so much on video of just black people being victimized and then nothing happening or nobody being held to account or this person dying, and maybe the city will pay out some money, but a life is lost. So to have a video where in real time, black person's being assaulted by a white person, and then black people come to that.
Being assaulted by white people. There were multiple people.
Yeah, by white people, and it's and then multiple black people come to this black person's aid. Again, it was just this big moment of just catharsis and just unity, and just like we're really sick of this shit. Now, I again, I'm not like simping for white people, but I get how for some white people sitting on the sidelines, your algorithm might be showing a lot of black people like either looting or like a lot of these smash and grabs that I see on the internet. Like they'll show Gucci in all these stores, and there's always all these skinny black dudes running in these like stores, and somebody stole $300,000 worth of jewelry. And that's another thing, to the point where we were talking about the San Franciscos and Portlands and stuff. They show a lot of that.
Make the big city scary.
Right, this criminality that's going on, and to a lot of people, that's what they see, and they're like, you guys aren't victims anymore. But the difference is the guy who smashed and grabbed the thing, if the cops get in reach of him, they're going to either kill him or arrest him. But the white people who perpetrate things against black people, they rarely get held into account to the same, amount.
I'm not going to dismiss the racial aspect of the Montgomery thing, but there's also a class aspect, because
There's a class thing, yeah, because of the boat thing and that privilege thing.
And the whole, like, I put my boat here, like, well, this is a reserved spot.
But it's literally Montgomery, Alabama. They literally used to trade slaves there. Their mayor is the first black mayor. Alabama is, you want to talk about gerrymandered, it's still, Alabama and Mississippi are still white majority control places that have a way above average amount of, I think Mississippi is almost half and half black-white. And I think Alabama's like 30 or 40-some%. But these are large population black states
that are misrepresented,
that have no, and it all goes back to race with that. And I can pivot back to the Trump thing again. Just things that we just let fester and fester that we did not deal with. I was watching this interview with Marianne Williamson, who's running for president on a Democratic. Is she Democratic or independent? I think she's Democratic because she's challenging Joe Biden. But she was talking about one of those things that Germany did after World War II is they put a lot of policies in place to not just hold Nazis to account, but actually pay reparations to Jews and things like that. And they did things to kind of handle that. And this country has never done that. And so, don't get me wrong, I don't think it'll put like a good bow and we'd all be like singing Kumbaya. But it's kind of like a drug addict or a person who has an eating disorder. You can't do anything if you can't even address the problem. And that's the problem in America is we never even address the problem.
Back to Ron DeSantis. He wants to take teaching slavery occurred out of schools. It's like, look, it's ugly. And we should just, as a country, acknowledge this happened. It was really ugly.
Thing about it, too, like this, I can get, in a way, this knee-jerk reaction of a human being just not wanting to be told that they're shitty or whatever. But I think we've talked about this before. When women talk about, like, what men do, I don't take that as an offense when, like, somebody says a man raped me or, because I'm not a rapist.
Slap me on the ass.
Or I'm not an abuser. And I would say, like, to white people, sometimes if you all recoil and feel a certain way when people don't take that as something against you. We're not putting it on you.
It's a tribalism thing,
and if you really want to get down to it, what we really need to do, besides get rid of capitalism, we need to get rid of race. Because race is a social construct down to DNA.
Sure.
There's no markers. There's no genetic markers for race. You can do markers for regions that people are from, but the most genetic diversity, ironically enough, is between Southern Saharan Africans. Africans are more genetically diverse from one another than a white person is to a Japanese person or a black person.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because everybody bottlenecked out of Africa. So everybody who came out of that is so genetically close, but all of the genetic differences are mostly between Southern Saharan Africans. A person from Kenya and a person from Ghana are way more different than a person from India and somebody from Iceland, because those are like the same people.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I'm not going to dispute because
there's a couple really good books about that. The invention of the white race. This came around like in the 1600s because, back to your thing of class, poor white and black people were starting to have these rebellions because of working conditions, and one of the ways that they started like parsing it up is like if you were from African descent, you were black, and if you were this, you were white. You know what I mean? At first, it was males and a land-owning thing, but eventually, okay, Irish get in there, okay, Italian and Jews in the last 100 years. But this thing, it's all a social construct, dude.
Absolutely. and to your point, when the people on the top of the food chain want to distract from what they're doing to really, trying not to use the word rape, but
yeah, running away with the money.
What do they do? Make them fight amongst themselves.
Yep.
Make the black people hate the white people and the Irish.
That's why this transgender and this thing about grooming with the fucking drag queens.
Yeah, jeez.
This is what 0.00 some percent of the population, no matter where you feel left, right, or center about these people. But this has managed to be a cudgel in this thing that's just in every internet chat thing that everyone's talking about.
No, it's and that's a great example because so it used to be, okay, we'll put it on the black people. Then it was put on the Hispanic people. Then it was put on the gays. And none of those are socially acceptable anymore.
Well, because eventually you got some black people in your family, eventually some Hispanics got in your family, eventually your son was gay.
People,
you know what I mean?
And not many people know a lot of trans people.
But now trans is easy because not just that, but it's the thing about the trans thing is that it's so new to people because we don't teach that sexuality is a spectrum. So that even a well-meaning person, it's just hard to approach the issue because in our binary way of thinking, it's hard to think of a spectrum way of thinking. You know what I mean?
Right.
And on top of that, you throw in any type of religion, and then you throw in
the puritanical aspect of...
You throw in human beings' inclination to just kind of go with what they know, and anything different being like, something you don't want to do.
You're good. I was trying to see where the board was. Sorry.
But all that lends to them being able to throw that out, and it and again, this Trump type voter, that's not necessarily all right wing. You know what I mean? But there are certain things that are really on a visceral level, like really resonate with them, and they go with it, and they take advantage of that, and you got your wedge issue.
Well, the funny thing is, the term right wing and Republican and Trump they've been so distorted.
It's the weirdest Venn diagram.
It is, because
it's like bubble wrap.
When I was a kid, it was, the Republican Party was fiscal conservatism, family values, small government. If you can tell yourself as a Trump supporter you believe in those things and look yourself in the mirror, which I know you can.
If you want to go back, Republicans were the liberals. You know what I mean? And the Democrats were the conservatives.
Well, and the Democrats were the racist party.
Yes.
I mean the
party of the KKK.
Yeah,
to the point to where even down to who was the guy who
Lyndon Johnson was the one that...
Who just died. He didn't just die. But
you're thinking Strom
Thurmond, yeah. Like those types...
They call them the Dixiecrats.
Yeah, that were, because of the Civil War, they refused to even become Republicans when they did.
Right, because they
after the shift, they were so like, I refuse to be a Republican. You know what I mean? It's that hardcore.
And then Lyndon Johnson does the whole civil rights thing and...
Flip-a-dip-dip.
And he said, I just lost the South from my party for a generation.
Yeah.
And it was
three
generations there.
Lyndon. And counting.
And counting. And on. And he tells someone, and he tells someone. All right. I don't have a good segue, so I won't even try. But the strikes going on in the entertainment world impact people we both know. So you are a much more prolific comic than I am. In fact, you've been nominated by Cleveland Scene Magazine as the best male comic. And well deserved. But, this impacts people we know. And I think this is as clear an example of oligarchy or class warfare as you'll ever see, because the people at the top of this can go, we're billionaires.
Didn't Bob Iger already open his mouth and say...
I didn't hear it if he did. It wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, it was a few...
So he's the former CEO of Disney?
Yeah. I think they brought him back in.
Oh, is he back? Okay.
Yeah, but they were saying like they just don't understand, and they're being unrealistic with their demands and all this other stuff. I think they kind of got in everybody's ear because I haven't heard from any of the higher ups anymore about how they really think. But when it comes down to it, I mean... They're not even asking for much, dude. They're really not. I mean, they're like, we literally get paid less than what we did 10 years ago. You're stressing out writers' room, and you're making it so that you have these little things that are. It's kind of how they do, like in the service industry, to where if you work less hours, you don't end up getting any type of health benefits or things like that. But the nature of the business is nobody really is going to be able to qualify for that many hours to even get in there. I think you need to make 26 and change to be part of SAG and get,
I have no idea.
It's 26,000 something to be part of SAG and be able to get the health insurance and things like that. And they've made these laws to where if you're officially not in the writer's room, if you're more of a missionary and you're not missionary. I've been drinking
Visionary?
whiskey. No. What is the people in Russia? What are they? Mercenaries.
Mercenaries.
If you're more of a mercenary.
Mercenary. Who gives a fuck? Let's smoke more weed.
We're shooting straight. That's all it means. If you're more of that, then you're not tied down to any corporate structure that's obligated to pay you anything, and And the corporate structure has been moving towards that because, again, it helps their bottom line. But over the years, it has started fucking these people to where they can't even earn a living, which, again, if you want to talk about these liberal cities and stuff like this, that adds to the dichotomy, that adds to the homelessness and all this other stuff. Because outside of these people in these tents and stuff like that, like I've seen these things. You can follow them on YouTube and stuff. Like the amount of people who are sleeping in vans and like in Walmart parking lots and stuff like that. And these aren't like weirdos who are shooting up. These are literally like people like me and you, and like you can ask like, well, why are you still here? And some of them are tied to like family or still like working out there, or they're in the kind of this island of like it's bad now, but if I keep pushing, it'll be good in this many months or weeks or whatever like that. And so it's just a situation that's just indicative of what's going on in general in labor, which is why I think UPS, I think the UAW is getting ready to strike too. Like everybody has been squozed so hard, and nobody can afford anything right now.
Prices of everything in terms of housing and just cost of living have gone crazy.
And Cleveland, man, I'm living in Cleveland, and I'm paying like a lot of money in rent right now, like more than what a mortgage would be for a decent place. And it's hard to get a mortgage. I mean, and that's the thing, like, Cleveland's not even, again, like one of these hot markets, but one of the things I found talking to comics that we know that have moved to New York and Chicago and LA is you get in any of these gentrified whatever areas of the city, and all these apartments are $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000.
Oh, it's crazy.
In every single city, including Cleveland. All of them are $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and $5,000. Who the fuck? 5 times 12. What's that? 6? Who the fuck has 60 G's to throw? I mean, you used to do a 30-year mortgage. You could paying 60 G's a year, you could pay off a decent house in 5 years, 10 years. You know what I mean?
I do. I don't want to be a douche, but I really lucked out because I refinanced this place at the right time through no skill of my own.
Well, no, that and that's the thing too, and that's how capitalism gets us, is that, you know what I mean, things that you have to do for your betterment is like, I don't begrudge you for that. You have to do that to survive, you know what I mean?
But John, I lucked out. So I didn't want to go down this path because I just stumbled into someone said, you should look into this, and like I did it at the time.
But that's awesome, and that's good. That's good for you, man. But it's like, again, like when I was again, these West Coast cities and stuff like that, we have so many zoning laws to where we can't build, so many places you have to have these single
California's
homes.
The worst. I mean, I want to talk about Bill Maher for a minute because he's kind of, I'm a Bill Maher fan, but he's kind of
I used to be, but I have not watched him in a while because he has become the old guy, get off my lawn.
He has absolutely become that.
I can't do it anymore.
He did a thing about, he wanted to get solar panels put on his shed on his property in California.
I've seen that, and the regulations that he's had to go through.
I'm with him on that. Now, he also did a whiny, rich white guy thing about the Barbie movie, which I've been asked multiple times. Have you seen the Barbie movie? I'm like, no, I haven't.
Hey, really quick before you go on, like this again, that goes back to my point of how people shit on these Seattles and Portlands and things like that. It's because I've heard Bill Maher talk about the problems he's had trying to get these solar panels, and because of some of the bureaucracy you get in a lot of these democratic places, again, people get mad at that, but then this rhetoric just comes in to where you just throw away the baby with the bathwater. So every leftist policy now becomes something that is up for critique, that is up for maybe we got it wrong. With even fucking Clarence Thomas with this shit with gay marriage, which of course everybody was whispering, is like, Clarence, if we do this, we could go back to the racial thing too.
And by the way, your wife is white.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Again, it just brings all this shit up of just the hypocrisy and the bullshit.
I have always had mixed feelings about Clarence Thomas. I've never liked the guy.
What's mixed about it, though?
What's mixed about it is I always thought, he earned where he is. He is a qualified...
He is literally an affirmative action hire. He did not earn...
Well, even more so. Look at the lifestyle the guy's fucking living. He's going on super yachts and doing this nonsense.
George Bush appointing him in after Thurgood Marshall was the biggest middle finger to black people. That was some subliminal type shit. You know this shit Thurgood Marshall had to do to become the first black Supreme Court justice, and for you to, he's literally the definition of a scab. You know what I mean? And he was the most quiet Supreme Court justice up until recently, when he kind of had to say.
Well, that was always a joke, because Anthony Scalia was basically like, and Clarence, here's how you're voting on this.
Yeah, he's a fucking puppeteer, man. Sorry, I ain't trying to get super amped, but Clarence Thomas him and Trump are indicative of just the root of the rot. The fact that we don't even have a code of ethics for the Supreme Court. We don't have what is it? I don't want statute of limitations. What is it? Term limits. You know what I mean?
It's a lifetime appointment. Sure.
It's just ridiculous, and he's taking advantage of that at every fucking step.
Here's where I'm going to be maybe sound like a complete asshole, but I always thought Clarence Thomas was just a fucking boring, annoying dude. I consider him to be like my racist.
He's boring, but he's on
fucking super yachts with billionaires. Fucking.
But here's the thing.
Harmonica. All right, sorry.
Here's the thing. He's boring the way Dick Cheney is boring. See, Trump's an asshole because he's loud and in your face. Dick Cheney did way more shit than Trump did, but he was quiet. You know what I mean? And the same can be said with Rumsfeld. Rumsfeld actually had, again, charisma.
Trump says, I could shoot someone in the face. Cheney shot someone in the face.
That's what I do. These fucking jokes write themselves.
These jokes write themselves.
That's what I'm saying, dude. That's what I'm saying. So even this amount of quietness or this amount of respectability politics still doesn't absolve you from the underall thing that you have done, or overall thing you've done. God damn it, whiskey.
All right.
We smoked weed and drank whiskey. Now we're talking politics. How do we do it? We got
to wrap this up. We talk about issue one. Issue one goes down. In addition to issue one going down, in addition to the abortion aspect, is the recreational weed aspect. Now, recreational weed was on the ballot in Ohio, and I want to say 2014 or 2012, probably 2012.
When Nick Lachey would have 30% of all weed control.
Yeah, and at that time, I had never smoked weed in my life. I'm high right now, so, but my position is not.
But
changed.
Everybody was right to vote it down back then.
I disagree with you so much. I cannot make it legal, then fix it. I understand it was going to be a monopoly.
But here's the thing, and to what we've been talking about this whole podcast. The inability to fix anything. This whole issue one thing of how things are so baked in, because people know if you get things to a certain point, you're not going to be able to outvote it or oust it. One of the reasons that Republicans hate Social Security is because it showed people that the government could do this thing, which is why they hate Medicaid and they don't want to do a Medicare for all, because they know if this becomes law, it will never not be law again.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
When people realize, this is actually a good thing.
And that's one of the things. And if they would have got that monopoly, it would have been so hard. And because people are still...
But people would not have been put in jail for smoking weed.
But I disagree. I disagree
have smoked
with
weed
you.
on Lorraine Avenue together in public, and I think you even said, "I feel safe. We got a white guy with us." I believe you said that. It was either you or it might have been Dave Flynn.
But it was in jest.
It was a joke. It was a good joke.
It was in jest.
You also weren't wrong.
but still, weed's legal in California, and people still get arrested for it. You know what I mean? So people.
True.
So the legality of it means nothing. And again, if you vote for a baked-in monopoly on somebody and already
the ponder rises again.
Hey, man, if you vote for a baked-in monopoly in an already a capitalistic system in a red state, that shit would not have went anywhere at all. It's like it's like voting for an orgy and trying to work your way back to monogamy. That's not gonna happen. Hey, let's stop all this fucking and sucking and eventually get to just one man and one woman slowly gaining weight and hating each other and never fucking
Okay, that sounds like you got a little bit deep and personal. All right, we got to wrap this up. Do you want to? I want to once again say John Armstrong has been nominated as the best male comic by Cleveland Scene Magazine. Please go to Cleveland Scene Magazine and vote for him.
Male.
You know what? Why not? Why not? You know what? You just probably fucked yourself. Anyway.
Well, if I fuck myself, we're back to me not necessarily being the cis male.
We are at Whiskey Congress on Instagram, Twitter, X, and whatever the fuck Twitter is anymore. We could go on for hours, but we're going to treat you with some respect and not do that. John, thank you very much for coming on. I wouldn't mind.
Thanks so much for having me. I love doing this podcast. It's so much fun.
I love having you on. We are Whiskey Congress, and we are done.